Alright guys, today we're going to mess around with variables, and I'm going to try my best to explain what they are and what they do and how they can be used. And so if you have no idea what variables are, then maybe this video is good for you. I'm going to try to explain it, but it's very hard, I feel, because variables, there are just so many things you can do with them, and they're kind of tricky to explain. But they are not that tricky to use once you get the hang of what they do and how they work. So, but yeah, so I'm going to try to explain, if I'm able to, how you can effectively use them. But let's just start at saying that if you don't know what a variable is, you can just look at the name. Variable, it's a value that can change. It's a value that can vary. So a variable it's very common in scripting, so if you've done any scripting before, you probably already know this. But I'm gonna try to explain what you can I keep saying the same thing over and over. Yeah, so I'm gonna try to pull in a few examples, but it's most important to know how they work from core, so that you can actually use them in your own situations. Because if you just use them because you know that works but you have no idea how it works, then you're not going to learn much from it. The important thing is learning how to use them yourself instead of just copying code. So hopefully you can learn something from this if you don't already know about variables. As I said, there's so many things you can use variables for, so it's going to be very tricky to explain. But I'm going to see if I can at least pull in some things that you can look at. So as I have this link in my description as well, as always, but this is again the engine scripts page, and it has a few of these variables posted on them, and I'm going to go through them, explain what they are and stuff, and then we're going to use them a little later for a few examples. Okay, so at the very top, or actually under the general one, there are a few things here that are variable related. These functions, rand float, rand int, these two, they generate a random value. So it's generating a random variable in the game when they run. So if you put them on start, it generates a random variable. Now that variable won't do anything on its own. You have to make it like reference in another like function or something. And I'm gonna use a random function later on to show you an example of how it works. But also, a lot of people don't know the difference between a float value and an int value. To be honest, I'm not too certain about it myself. But I guess I could say that if you want to use a decimal number in your variable, you want to use a float value. And if not, then you can just use int value, int variables, because int are just more general. If you just don't know what to use, just use an int. It's like that kind of solution. But if you're required to use a float, then just use a float. As for the limits of these, the limits are very high, so you can use, there are millions and billions of different variables in each of these data types. So I don't think you'll need to worry about that, especially not in Amnesia scripting. I don't think you would need to use several billion different variables in one script file. And if you do, maybe you're overdoing it, I don't know. Or maybe it's just a little something that you use it for that actually works effectively, but I can't think of an example where you want to use several billion variables. So I don't think you need to worry about where these values limit themselves, because an int has, I believe, around 5 billion different values. So you can put the int to value number 1, you can put it to number 2, you can put it in -10, but I think the limit as to how far the number can go is about 2.4 billion in each positive and negative. So it would be around 5 billion. I'm not sure it was 2.4 or 2.1, but it's around that. So, but that's still a lot. Several billion is just a lot, so I don't think you need to worry about that. So yeah, as I said, float and int, they are both number values, and you would then replace these parts in your script with a number. And for float, you might want to put a decimal number. You're not required to, but I'm not sure if the decimals work with int. They probably do, but for some reason float is used more for that. Again, also, if you're unsure what to use, int or float, you can just use an int, but if you're going to mix these in with another function code that requires either int or float, then you will of course need to use the same data type. So as an example, if you want to use a lever, you would probably need an int value because, well, for the last part, an int, the alStates part is an int value, so you want to use an int variable there. If you want to, of course, you don't need to use any variables whatsoever, but just an example. And then there are a lot of functions down here that require float instead. And also, so actually all of these parameters that you're defining when you're scripting a level are all data types, and they're all variables. A variable is of course anything that can change, so the lowest variable that you can use is a boolean, which has only two different things that it can vary between, which is true and false. And of course, if it was anything less than two, only one, I don't think you would call it a variable because it can't vary anymore, it's just one. But a boolean has two options, true or false, which is enough for a lot of different functions when it's a yes or no question. But if you want to use like a is it this, or this, or this, or whatever, then you want to use more than two. And another very common variable is a string. And you might already know what a string is, but in short, a string is a piece of text. So it's a special kind of variable. It doesn't it's not defined in the same way. It's not a number, pretty much. It's not true or false. It's not this or this. It's whether what is inside the actual string, the text file or text piece string. As it says here, example, hello is a string, hello world is a string, and what this specific function does is it checks a string whether it has the specified substring in it. So, but strings are really useful actually, but for variables, I don't use them personally that much, but of course they can be used for a lot of things. I guess I could try it out a little later. But anyways, debugging, there aren't exactly variables here, but here are the actual variables section. So it doesn't have that much actually. It has these, which may seem like a lot, but it's mostly just the same. These are local and global, and what they mean by local is that these variables can be used in this one map only. So you can have in map 1, you can put a local variable called key, and in map 2 you could put another local variable called key, and they will not interfere whatsoever. But a global variable, they are used if you want to do something in one map and make it affect another map. Then you want to use a global variable, because if you have a global variable in map 1 called key and you check for a global variable in map 2 for key, then it will be different depending on whether you were in the previous map and changed the variable or whatever you did. So it's globals are really cool to use if you want to make different things happen between maps. But if you don't need to use a global variable, it's probably best to stick with a local variable, because they take a lot less power, and also just to make sure that it doesn't interfere with any other variables that you might use later on unnecessarily. Okay, so here are, as I said before, these are int values and these are float values, and then there's these string values. So what these particular values can be used for, you can also combine them with the ones I had up top anyways, but set local var int. This is one that I use quite a lot actually. I use it a lot more than float, because I just use int, because I don't really care whether to use a float or an int, but I just use an int. So set local var int. and then it has the name of the variable and the value of the variable. So what you define here, you just, what you can use an int for, or float if you like, but I just use int. You set this variable to something. The code, if you know already, the code is read from top to bottom, but it only reads from top to bottom in the functions that is being called, that are being called. So if you say on start, it reads the first line, second line, third line, and onwards all the way until on start is finished. Let's just open a file to look at in the meantime, I guess. Let's open up level 2. I don't remember what this was. This was the grunt file. Actually, it has only one on start, so maybe it's not the best example. Let's go on the crowbar one. This has a lot of script for crowbars already, but what they do, the on start is ran as the game is started right away. So first it does this line, and then it does this line. But it's not noticeable because it all happens simultaneously, but technically the top one is ran before the bottom one. So if you did something, if you set a variable above where you check for a variable, then the check will be affected by where you set it. But if you check for it before you set it, then it will be different, if you get what I mean. Let's just open up a script file that I have for a level 5.map. That was the .map, not HPS file. Here is a completely empty file, so I'm just going to write void on start, and this is going to be ran as we start up this map. Let's just go here and take as an example local var int. So we set the local var int. Pretty much these are all dependent of, or not dependent, but they are related. So you can set this one to say value number 1, and then you can use it again later to set it to value number 10, and it jumps to number 10. But if you use add local var int 10, it will add to what is already there. So if it's 1 to start with, it will add 10, and then it will be 11. And then you can use get local var int to return that number, and it will find what the number currently is, and it will replace it with what you could have put as a number instead. So let's say you wanted to fade out within 10 seconds, you could put number 10, or if you wanted to fade out with another time zone, whatever, in another time, I don't even know what to say there. If you wanted to fade out in another speed, then you can put a variable. You can get a variable in there, and it will fade out in the amount of seconds that the variable is currently at. Okay, that was probably a horrible example. Sorry about that. But let's see. Okay, set local var int. Let's just put this in right here. Set local var int. Replace string with double quotes and the name of this variable. You can name it whatever you want. Just don't use any special characters, as always, in your code, because that's just, you never want to use a exclamation mark or a question mark or a special symbol, because they are usually used for other things. Anyways, so let's call this one int. Let's just call it int, and we're gonna set the value to 1. And so now once the game is run, it's going to set an invisible variable in the game to 1, and this variable is called int, and it's just called int so that you can reference it later on. And then we're gonna get this variable later on, just below it actually, get local var int string as name, and this is the name it's going to get, so int. Okay, so on start is ran. It's running this code, so it's setting int to 1, and then it's running this code right away, and it's getting local int. So if you run this, then int will be 1 right now. If you're thinking of if this does anything in the game right now, no, it doesn't do anything. You need to combine it with other functions, playing music, maybe other functions, set entity active. You can put variables in everyone, I think. Like, well, maybe not these particle systems. Well, you could put, it is a string value, so I guess you could put a string variable in there. So you could put string, you can put variables in every of these functions, but they might not be as effective in every one of them, but it's possible. So if this game was ran right now, and when this is called, it will be 1 as it was right here. But if we cut out this right here and put it above it, right now it's going to get local var int before it sets it. So get local var int, var int, that I don't find it, so by default the value is 0. So this would be returned as 0 right now. And then it's going to set it to 1 after it has found it. You won't notice that these are happening in order like this in the game because they're all happening at once, but they are happening one at a time. And yeah, so I guess hopefully you understand that they are run in order the way they're added. And yeah, so actually if you go back to the top here and where we have randint, let's use this. We just put randint, and inside of this, let's just remove the get one. Inside set local var int, instead of putting the actual string right here, I believe you can, no, I mean the value. Okay, so you have the name, you call it int, and then you want to put it to value, but you don't know what to put it. Like if you want it to be a random value, let's say if you want 4 things to happen, but you want them to be different every time, then you can put instead of the actual number. This looks a little weird, actually not the semicolon. This looks a little weird, but inside you put another function within a function. So this function returns numbers, so therefore it's like, I'm not sure how to explain this, actually. I can't think of how to explain it. I think I just lost my mind right now. Working with variables can be really confusing, especially when you're explaining things and you forget what you just explained. Yeah, so it's a function within a function, and it's returning something within another function. So this int, if we define these, the minimum value it can have, let's put it to 0, and let's put the maximum value as 4, then when it's going to set a variable called int to a completely random value between 0 and 4. So it could be 0, 1, 2, 3, or 4. But you never know because it's random each time. So if you would run, oh, actually I just write these in when I'm scripting. Get local var int, and if we were to get local var int right now, the value would be different each time. Well, it could of course be a coincidence and be the same, but it could end up being 0, 1, 2, 3, or 4. So it has 5 different values that it could get right now, and that could be really useful if you want to make different things happen. So if you have, like, let's say you have a function down here, and inside that function you put an if statement. So if the value is 1, then play sound 1. If the value is 2, play sound 2. So it will only play one of the sounds by doing it just like this. It will only play one of them, but it will be different each time. So it will be a different value, a random value between 0 and 4, inclusive, that is. And yeah, so let's go back down here. I already explained local and global. I already explained float and int, so these are pretty much the same. Just don't need to worry about that. And then there are the strings. So these are pretty much the same. I don't use them as much, but you can use them. You can use a string value instead of a number. So instead of having a number right here, you can put a piece of text inside there. So constructor string as value. Yeah, so you can put a text value. They aren't really that reliable every time, but there are a few things that can be really useful for, but I don't really know of an example right now. But okay, so let's say we've covered this, and these are global, these are exactly the same except they happen in several maps. So yeah, and that's actually all of the variables that Frictional Games have in the actual engine itself. Of course, you can still use the very primitive versions of these by just doing int, which defines which data type you want, and then you put a name of it. So let's do int in capitals or whatever, and this would be the name of the variable, and then equals 1. So this would do that the int name, this is the name, and this is the data type. So this could be like float too, if you like float int, even though that makes no sense, but these are not dependent, this is just a name, it could be whatever you want. So this int, this value is set to 1, so it's the same as set local var int to 1, except it's done in the primitive fashion, or primitive way that is in the actual core script, or core script language, I should say. Anyways, yeah, so there we have some variables. They don't do anything in the file, in the script, in the map, I should say. They don't do anything in the map yet. So let's go and find some examples as to where we can use these. Okay, so I think I've come up with an example that I can use. Something I've never done before, but I think it's going to work. Okay, so basically, let's actually I should have placed this before, but basically what we have in this map is 4 spawn points, and I'm gonna make the player randomly spawn at one of these 4 spawn points whenever they turn on their lantern. So I'm gonna place the lantern. Where's the lantern? Lantern is here. Okay, so let's place the lantern in the middle of the room, right there. Okay, so first of all, when we load the map, we're gonna spawn at spawn point number 1, which is right here. Spawn point number 1. We're gonna spawn in front of this chair, the armchair, and then I have a metal chair, nice chair, and wooden chair, and well, chair, and so we're gonna spawn here. We can pick up the lantern. If you turn it on, you are going to be teleported to a random location, and just to make sure that that you know which way or which location you're teleported to, I'm going to display a message on the screen telling you where you have spawned. So yeah, this will be kind of interesting, I guess. It's just a very simple map, as you can see. It's just a room, and now we're gonna try to make this work. So what I found on this page, whenever there's a function called get, well, there are setters and getters, which are what they're called. Setters will set a value of a variable, and getters will get the variable. So in this case, this is a boolean though, so get it gets a boolean whether they're using the lantern or not. Since it's a boolean, it only has 2 values, but it doesn't need anything more, because like either you're using your lantern or you're not using your lantern. Like if you're not doing either of them, then what are you doing? I mean, yeah, it's not like you're halfway using your lantern. Even if that was possible, you're still using it. So a boolean is suitable for this function, and I'm going to use this function to return that every time that you turn on your lantern, you're going to be teleported. Of course, I'm also going to have to make them not use the lantern after being teleported, or they may they may be constantly teleported back and forth. So I'm gonna make it turn off as well. Actually, I think I might use a repeating timer to check for this. And if I'm saying a lot of random things that you don't know, maybe you will understand a little more once we get to actually setting this together. So right now, this is just a map. I don't think I need to do anything more with that right now, but for the scripting, let's do on start. We're going to add a timer. This is going to be a loop. So actually I might make a separate tutorial on this later, but this is just a looping timer, and I'm gonna name it timer, and I'm gonna set it to 1 second, and I'm going to call this function timer loop. So what I'm using this timer loop for is it's going to loop every second, and if you're using your lantern at the time it's ran, you're being teleported. So void timer loop, and then the parameters, which I remember are string and in as timer. You can look them up on the page if you don't remember them. Inside here I'm gonna put this code that we found right here. Get lantern active, but we're gonna put them in an if statement, because alone, if you just put it like this, then it doesn't do anything, because it's like, yeah, you're using a lantern, now what? So we're going to do if, and then parameter parentheses, because that's just how it works, and then we're going to put get lantern active inside there, not the semicolon, and if get lantern active equals true. So if they are using their lantern, then we're going to put a sub block within that block, and then we're going to look up the teleport player function, and this will already do as it says. It will teleport a player, and the position is going to be random. And the way we do this is, let's say we just put, you can put a string to start with, and then we're going to do player start area, I believe, wasn't that what it was called to begin with? If you click on this, player start area _2, this is _1, this is _4, and this is _3. So we do player start area underscore, but we do nothing more. We're going to do plus, and as you can see, we are going to go back up to these functions of the variables, and we're actually going to go all the way up to random, and we're going to do a random int right here, not this parent semicolon there, player start area underscore plus random int, and it's going to be random within 0, actually it's going to be random within 1 and 4, like that. So what it does now is that when you're using your lantern, you're going to be teleported to player start area, but it's only going to define which area it is randomly with this function. And also I'm going to add this right here, because it's going to be a looping timer, so every second it reoccurs. I'm going to remove that name actually. So add timer, it repeats the timer every second. So as I said earlier, it runs from top to bottom. So this is the timer, does this function, and then if that is true, it runs this function, but if it's false, it will skip it, and then it will run this function, which will call this function, and it will repeat. So whenever it comes here, it starts over again every second, but it doesn't teleport a player every second unless they're using their lantern. So and also I believe inside here, inside this block that we have already, I'm going to add another function, which is set message. Oh wait, actually, yeah, I'm not sure about this one actually, since it uses the extra lang file. It might be different. Not too sure about that, but let's test it anyway. Set message. This will display a message on the screen, but since I gotta use the lang file, it might be a little weird to use. I'm not sure. Text category message. Actually, I should open up the lang file just to show that I have already put all this around here. You're gonna have to put the category. In my case, I believe I have a category called messages. No, I don't. Well, let's make one then. I'm just gonna copy category name journal, and outside category name journal, which is here /category, I'm gonna do category name message, and then I'm gonna put /category below it. Sorry if I'm not explaining what I'm actually doing here, but if you're used to using the extra English.lang file, you probably know what I'm doing right now. and then I'm gonna add just an entry inside here. We're gonna call it random, and it's going to tell you you have been teleported to location space. And this might not work actually. I can't tell if this is gonna work. If it doesn't, then okay, then at least I've learned something, that I can't use the extra lang file for this. But let's see, enter name random, and then we go back to the script file and string as the text entry being random. So it's going to run the text file that is located at message random, which is this message random, and then it's going to be for some time. But let's play it for 3 seconds. But what I'm going to do here in random as well, I'm going to do same as I did before, plus actually I think I might have miscalculated something here, because I can't use the get local var int because this isn't a local var int yet. But we can change that. Let's go back up here. Set local var int. Alright, let's see. I'm gonna think, where do we put this? I believe we put it before here, yeah. So before the if statement, we're going to set the variable. I'm gonna cut out what I have right here and just put it like that. And set local var int. This is going to be, let's call it, this variable is going to be random int. Let's call it that. And the value is going to be random. So by doing that, we do as we did earlier with rand int. Sorry if this is kind of confusing. Minimum is 1, maximum is 4. This is, actually I had that on my clipboard. Actually this is just what I did here earlier. I'm just using it in a separate function so that it will have a name, and therefore we can call the name instead. So if the lantern is active, we're going to teleport the player to spawn area underscore, and then we're going to add the number of get local var int. So get local var int and random int. Okay, so let's go slowly through this. Whenever the timer is run, which is every second, then every second this random int will be a random int. It's built every second. This number will change from being 1, 2, 3, or 4. So we will jump back and forth between those 4 numbers. And depending on what that number is, you will be teleported to a different location. Thanks to this, because every time that is changed, it's going to be called, if you're using the lantern, and it's going to add this number to the extension of this name because of this plus constructor right here. So it's adding this to the previous value, which is this string value, and then it's going to set the message random plus the exact same as we did here. So get local var int, it's going to be the same because it's only changed. It's not changed while this is running. It's only changed after this. After the whole thing is running and it's starting over again. So it's going to set this message on screen, and hopefully that will work. Yeah, I'm not too sure if this last part will actually work. It might not. But anyways, and also I'm going to make them not use their lantern. Set lantern active. That is set lantern active. This is just to make it not teleport you every second. It's gonna force you to not use your lantern after you've been teleported. False. And use effects, might as well. True. Let's save that file, and I think that should be it. Okay, let's try and see if this will actually run. Amnesia. Launch the game. Safety there. Sound loud. Start. Okay. Here we are in the map. You won't notice anything, but every second a timer is ran. So all these checks are ran every second, but you're not noticing it. Let's pick up this. Let's turn on the lantern. Oh, we're teleported to number 1. Oh, we're teleported. See? I'm turning on and off the lantern. Well, on the lantern. So every second we're teleported to a different location. Apparently the message does not appear though, which is a shame. Now we are at the brown chair. Now we are at the nice one. As you can see, I'm just standing here and we're being teleported to the different places every second if we're using this lantern. So every second we would be using it. We would be teleported. Okay, this is getting a bit annoying, but it is actually working. The message does not work though. But to change that, to make sure that it still works, or it might not work the same way, but it can do the same by using a little bit more of scripting, then I'm going to change this script a little. And let's say that you are, like, if you're teleported to number 1, then you're being told the message of 1. So I'm just going to add all of these. Let's see, random 1, you have been teleported to location 1. And then I'm going to copy that and paste, and paste, and it's going to be random 1, random 2, random 3, and random 4. You have been teleported location 2, 3, 4. So what we're going to do inside here is we're going to put another if statement. So it's like an if within a looping timer. If get local var int random int, we're going to put that in here. If get local var int random int equals to 1, actually you could put this to doing the same up here. This is just within one function, but you could separate them all into ifs blocks, which would be do the same, except would be more code. So if that is 1, then we're going to set message. Let's just cut that out there and paste it in here. Set message random 1. If you get what I'm saying here, if the value is currently 1, set message 1, and then we're just going to copy this and paste. Did a little weird there. And if it's 1, set message 1. If it's 2, set message 2. If it's 3, set message 3. If it's 4, set message 4. Save. Now let's start up the map again. The sound is slightly loud actually. Let's turn up. You have been teleported location 2. You have been teleported to location 3. You have been teleported to location 1, 3, 1, 2, 1, 3, 2, 1, 3, 3, 2. Is it not teleporting me to 4? I'm pretty sure it does sometimes. 3, 1, or did I forget something there? No, it's still 4. Well, okay, it's just random, of course. I don't even remember where 4 was. Which one of these is 4? It's the wooden chair. Location 2. Location 1. I want 4 to appear. Come on. Give me 4. Give me 4, please. It says 1 when it's on 4. I probably forgot something in the script file. Oh, it's 4 seconds. I put it to 4 seconds instead of displaying message number 4. That was a mistake of me. Okay, this is just I feel like I've been going on for way too long about this little thing. It doesn't even make sense. Okay, I'm gonna save these changes right now. And okay, let's just say hopefully you understand a little bit more about variables, and I feel like this was a horrible tutorial though, but yeah, I don't know what more to say. If you need any more help, then ask me. I will try to help you the best I can. I just feel like maybe I can't explain this. This is just a little tricky to explain. But anyways, if you learned anything, or if you found this video helpful in any way, then I would really appreciate it if you would like the video. It really motivates me to make more of these tutorials. So yeah, as with that, I will see you later maybe. Okay, see ya.